Wiltshire, England, August 2016. Summertime had England in its grip. The heat wave baking the continent had finally hit British shores, and the nation was revelling in its signature jubilant mood that was always unzipped any time the mercury nudged the 30s. Deck chairs dotted the parks, freckles multiplied, children played in fountains, and residential streets reverberated to the slap of flip-flops on bare feet. Not that Flora Sykes could see or hear any of this. Her parents' back garden, 8 acres in the Wiltshire countryside, was bordered by high beech hedges and carpeted in chamomile lawns, and she had been blissfully face down and unconscious on the lounger by the pool since arriving, a cool 3 hours after she'd stepped off the plane. Her big brother Freddie was still nowhere to be seen, sleeping like a student. Her father was on the golf course, and her mother, swatting away Flora's half-hearted, exhausted offers to help, was efficiently plunging langoustine into boiling water, apparently unmoved by the creature's Nemo-like attempts to escape by wriggling the plastic bags they were held in across the counters. Flora had intended to read. One of her New Year's resolutions, involving working less and playing more, had been to read everything on last year's Man Booker long list, but by March that had been amended to reading the shortlist, and now she would just be grateful to get through this first book that she'd bought in January and was still only a third of the way through. The problem was adrenaline. Her life was ruled by it. Long, intense, work-around-the-clock bursts, followed by crashes into oblivion, and it left precious little time or energy for pastimes like reading. This week had been a case in point. She'd woken up in Palm Beach on Monday, Chicago on Wednesday, and had squeezed in a meeting and drinks party in Manhattan yesterday before darting to JFK in her cocktail dress for the red-eye to Heathrow. "Cup of tea, darling?" Her mother's voice, distant, sounded in her ear. She heard the chink of china on limestone. "And you need to put some more lotion on. Your shoulders are beginning to go pink." A warm hand touched her skin, testing across her shoulders for proof. Flora raised her head, a cloud of butter-blonde hair falling over her face. "Huh?" she groaned. "Oh, darling, I worry about you. All this jet lag plays havoc with your system." Flora flipped her hair back and tried to push up into a sitting position. Her mother was swinging her legs onto the lounger next to her, a copy of The Lady on her lap and a matching cup of tea in her hands. Her straw hat threw shade over a face that was still beautiful, even in her late 50s. Flora fiddled with the straps of her Liberty print cotton bikini, not great for swimming in, but she had no intention of getting wet, well, assuming Freddie didn't chuck her in, and reached for the tea. The steam pinked her already sleep-flushed face as she drowsily watched the electric blue dragonflies skimming the water's surface, swallows swooping in the clear skies above. "You work too hard. It's not good for you." "I know, but I can't step back at the moment. I need to keep bringing in new clients. It's what Angus hired me for. I can relax a bit come Christmas." "Christmas? Darling, you'll be long dead by then. It's only August. Frankly, I'm worried you won't see out the day." "Well, of course you are. You're always worried. You'd worry about not having anything to worry about." Flora smiled. "When's Daddy getting back?" Her mother glanced across, eyebrows hitched and a sceptical expression in her blue eyes. "I said lunch was 12:30, so 1. "And when is lunch?" 2. Flora chuckled. Her father's tardiness was legendary. He'd been late to his own wedding, burst tyre on the Aston, the hospital when Freddie was born, traffic in Mayfair, the hospital when she was born, the dog got lost in Hyde Park and the ambulance couldn't wait, and his brother's funeral, the high street closed for the farmer's market in Marlborough. The only thing he had never, ever been late for, not once in 40 years, were his auctions. He had been chief auctioneer at Christie's throughout the late 80s, until fairly recently when he'd retired. The auctions were known as lively, rambunctious affairs, more akin to shooting parties, and he had been fated for his witty commentaries, which whipped up both mood and appetite, and meant that more often than not he brought the hammer down on record prices.